Hello and welcome to this episode of DM tutorial series of videos. Today's topic is Giffen Paradox. In this video, we'll learn what is Giffen Paradox, what is Giffen goods, and how Giffen goods react to changes in prices and changes in income. Giffen Paradox is an interesting phenomenon in economics. Why it is called a paradox? Because this phenomenon does not follow the law of demand. That's why it is called a paradox. Giffen Paradox is named after the famous economist Robert Giffen. Now, before we start Giffen Paradox, we must know what is Giffen. I mean, what is Giffen goods, right? Giffen goods are those goods which have certain characteristics. What are the characteristics? Number one, the consumer spends a large proportion of his money income on that good. Number two, the commodity has a very weak substitution effect. And of course, it is positive because substitution effect is always positive. Number three, the commodity has very strong negative income effect. Okay. Number five, the commodity does not have any close substitute. And finally, the negative income effect is so strong that it outweighs the positive substitution effect. As a result, the price effect becomes negative. Okay. Now, I will show diagrammatically how changes in prices or changes in income impacts the consumption of commodities by a consumer. Okay. Number one, this is very important. That is why it is called a paradox. This does not follow law of demand. Sorry, it does not follow the law of demand. Now, what is law of demand? We know that a law of demand states that when price of a commodity falls, quantity demanded of that commodity increases, and when the price of a commodity increases, quantity demanded of that commodity falls. That means price and quantity are inversely related to each other, where price is the independent factor and quantity demanded is the dependent factor. So that is the law of demand. So in normal cases, for normal goods, law of demand would be, a demand card would be downward sloping. This is demand card. Quantity and price. This is normal demand curve. Okay. But in case of Giffen goods, the demand curve will be upward sloping, like this. Quantity and price. Here you see a downward sloping demand curve D dash. When the commodity is normal, that means as price is falling, quantity demanded is increasing. Here we see D dash an upward sloping demand curve where when price falls, quantity demanded also falls, or when price increases, quantity demanded increases. So in that way, given goods, that means the goods which have those characteristics violates the law of demand. Now we'll see how changes in income and changes in prices affect the consumption of the given goods. So given good can be derived as where the quantity demanded falls with fall in price or rises with increase in price. Okay, that is given good. Now we'll see how change in price of the commodity affects the consumption of the commodity. Now it must be remembered that price effect is equal to substitution effect, which is always positive, plus income effect, which can be either plus or minus. Suppose this is the initial budget line or price line. This is X, this is Y. Now, with this budget line, the consumer is in equilibrium, say IC1, at this point. Say this is P. Now let there be a big fall in price of X so that the budget line becomes like this. Say this is L1. So new budget line is PL1. The old budget line was PL. Sorry, let it be not P, let it be Q. Yeah. Now price of the commodity, price of X has fallen, whereas price of Y and income of the consumer have remained unchanged. So as price of the commodity falls without any change in money income and price of another commodity, the real income of the consumer increases. And with that increased real income, the consumer can buy more, as is depicted by PL1. Previously it was PL, OL, now it is OL1. Now with this higher real income, the consumer will want to get greater satisfaction, so he will move to a higher indifference card. See, this is the indifference card. IC2. Let it be point R. So at point Q, the consumer was consuming OX1 units of Y, X, and OY units of Y. This was the consumer's initial consumption of the two commodities. Now the consumer has reached a higher indifference curve and a higher point of tangency or point of equilibrium. At point R, the consumer is consuming OX2 units of X and OY2 units of Y. That means as price of X has fallen, consumption of X has also fallen. The consumption of X has fallen by X1, X2 as a result of fall in price of X. This is Giffen good. This happens in case of only Giffen goods. Okay. Now here we have considered only the effect of change in price of the Giffen good, the price of the other commodity and income of the consumer remain unchanged. Now it should be remembered that when we talk about a combination of two commodities, if one commodity is inferior, then another commodity is superior. That's why he is purchasing Y1, Y2. That is far more than the fall in X1, X2. So his increase in purchase of Y has increased from OY1 to OY2. That means Y is a superior commodity to the consumer. So every combination or every bundle must consist of one superior commodity if there is an inferior commodity. Right? Now let us see how it works when income of the consumer changes without any change in the related prices of the commodities. Only income of the consumer either falls or goes up. Okay, I am erasing this part. Quantity of X and here quantity of Y. This is the initial budget line, say B1, L1. As the income of the consumer increases, the budget line will shift parallelly rightward because relative prices of the commodities have not changed. So B1, L1 will shift parallelly rightward. So let it be the new budget line. This is B2, L2. Okay. Here price of the X has remained constant, price of Y has remained constant, only money income of the consumer has increased. So initially the consumer was equilibrium at point say R, consuming OX1 units of X and OY2 units of Y. As a result of increase in money income of the consumer and resultant increase in real income, the consumer moves to a higher indifference curve and higher point of equilibrium, let it be S. Here, at this point, the consumer is consuming X2 of X and Y2 of Y. That means his consumption of X, which is a Giffen good, has fallen from OX1 to OX2. Whereas consumption of the superior good has increased from Y1 to Y2. So consumption of Y has increased by this much, and consumption of X has fallen by this much. Here in this case, the income effect is negative and very strong. Substitution effect says that as price of a commodity falls, the consumer will purchase more of it. This is the psychology of consumers. But income effect says that the consumer will not consider the relative changes in prices. The consumer will only consider his increase in real income. So in this case, although the substitution effect is pushing the consumer to purchase more of X, but his income effect is so strong and it is influencing the consumer to buy too much of Y, so that the money left can be used to purchase only this much of X. Okay, income effect is negative and very strong. Substitution effect is very weak. Effect positive but very weak. That is why, as a result of increase in income of the consumer has decreased the purchase of that commodity, which is the given good. Right? So we have learned what is Giffen Paradox, what is given goods, what are the characteristics of given goods, and the diagrammatic representation of changes in consumption of the commodity, consumption of that given good as a result of change in price of that commodity and change in money income of the consumer. Okay, so it is enough for today. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please feel comfortable to be in touch with comment box, and we shall appreciate your subscription. Go on subscribing our channel so that we can provide you more useful, meaningful and quality videos. Okay, thank you for watching. Goodbye. Stay well.